Okay, here we go for chapter 8. When I'm reading this, I want you to listen very carefully and I want you to listen out for adjectives. Now remember, adjectives are describing words. There seems quite a few of them in this chapter. So when you can pick them out, if you hear them or you notice them in the text, then email them to me. Here we go, chapter 8. Wild Boy eased the door shut. Moonlight streamed in silver shafts through joins in the caravan's corrugated walls. Empty wine bottles littered the floor. The air was thick with the stench of booze. He brought the letter from his coat pocket and laid it on the floor beside the door. He knew he should leave, but again his curiosity took control. Surely there was time to snoop around a little, to see if he could find out what the letter was all about. The van was a mess. A clothes chest lay on its side, and books were scattered among the bottles on the floor. On a work table against the wall was a jumble of scientific instruments, test tubes filled with golden fluid, coils of silver wire wrapped around copper rods, a rat cage with metal pegs attached to its sides, and piles of papers scribbled with notes. Edging closer, Wild Boy flicked through a few of the pages. He saw anatomical drawings of body parts, twisting muscles in an arm, a diagram of a skull, a human head bisected to expose its cauliflower brain. The hairs bristled on Wild Boy's back. Time to get out of here, he decided. He turned to leave, but stopped. The clothes chest, he said. There was something strange about it. His eyes were drawn there instinctively. And now, as he stepped nearer, he realised why. The chest lay on its side, and he could see the base within, but it didn't look deep enough when compared to the panel outside. Was it possible? His heart pounded faster as he crouched and slid a hand inside the chest. He groped the base until, click, one of the wooden panels hinged open. A wide grin spread across his hairy face. There was a secret compartment. He thought of pound notes, boxes of jewels. Whatever was in there, he'd just pinch enough to rent his own wagon so he didn't have to go back to Finch. His heart sank as he slid the contents out. It was just another sheet of paper with technical diagrams and instructions for some sort of scientific contraption. A tangled sphere of cogs and pipes skewered on an axle between two wheels. Several lines, wires he supposed, trailed from the bottom of the sphere and connected to... Wild Boy leaned closer, hoping he'd seen it wrong, but he hadn't. The wires were connected to human heads. They seemed to go into the heads. Thud! He jumped in fright, dropping the paper. Outside, something had crashed against the wall. Wild Boy stood very still, trying to listen over the manic thumping of his heart. He heard boots trudge through the mud. He crept to the wall and peered through one of the joins in the metal. He couldn't see much, but there was no mistaking the crooked figure of Professor Henry Wollstonecraft, with his blood-blistered nose and shaded spectacles. The old scientist leaned against the opposite van. His golden ring glinted in the moonlight as he drank from a bottle of wine, spilling half of its contents over his crumpled suit. The old soak, Wild Boy thought, letting himself relax. With the professor so drunk he could easily sneak from the van unseen, but then he heard something else. "Henry!" a voice called. He shot to another crack in the wall. Outside, a shadow stretched long and monstrous across the mud. It was the hooded man. Wild Boy shifted to another crack. He still couldn't see the face under the hood. He couldn't see anything under that tattered leather cloak. The man moved fast, but with strange, awkward strides, loping and unbalanced, like a wounded creature. His voice was deep and vicious. "I have come, Henry," he said. Before the professor could reply, the hooded man attacked. A gloved hand shot from under the cloak. It grabbed the scientist by the neck and slammed him against the van. Finally, Wild Boy saw beneath the hood, and he had to bite his lip to stop himself from crying out. It wasn't a man that he saw, but a mask. It was one of the carnival masks that were sold around the fairgrounds. A white porcelain doll's face, eerily featureless except for a long, hooked nose, like a bird's beak that protruded from the centre. Those masks had given Wild Boy the creeps ever since he heard they were modelled on costumes worn by plague doctors centuries ago. Masks of death, some of the showmen called them. Behind the mask, the dark eyes glinted. The tip of the porcelain beak tapped the professor's spectacles as the hooded man leaned closer. "Where is it?" he growled. He struck the professor around the face, shattering his lenses, and with his other hand he lifted the old man clear off the ground. "Where is the machine?" Blood trickled down the professor's forehead. He looked at his attacker through cracked black lenses. But it wasn't fear that Wild Boy saw in the man's eyes. It was sadness, infinite sadness. "I wish I'd never built the thing," the professor said. "It's an unholy device. No one should have that power." "It is too late for that now, Henry," replied the hooded man. The professor slid a shaky hand into his pocket. "No, not too late." He thrust a knife at his attacker, but he was too drunk and too weak. The hooded man twisted his hand and rammed the blade into Professor's stomach. Wild Boy reached back in shock. He bashed against the workbench and a copper rod rolled from the surface. "No!" he gasped. The clatter of the rod echoed around the caravan. Slowly he peered again through the wall. The hooded man was gone. He moved to another crack, then another. Where was he? Where the hell was he? The door handle turned. Wild Boy edged back, groping for anything to use as a weapon. His hand landed on one of the jars from the work table. He held it closer, saw golden liquid bubble inside. The van door creaked open and moonlight trickled through. The hooded man appeared in the doorway, a ragged silhouette with a white-beaked face. "Is that you, boy?" he said. "Are you in there?" The jar trembled in Wild Boy's hands. "Fight," he heard you say. "Fight while you still can." He sprung up and held the liquid. It splashed over the mask and the man stepped back in shock. Seizing his chance, Wild Boy burst past him and hurled himself through the door. He tumbled down the caravan steps and crawled to where Professor Woolstonstoft lay curled in the mud. The old scientist's shirt was torn and sopping with blood. Sliding even closer, Wild Boy pressed desperately on the wounds. Blood soaked the hair of his hands as he pressed even harder, crying out, "Professor, wake up, please!" But Professor Woolstonstoft was dead. "Boy!" a voice said. The hooded man urged from the caravan. Wild Boy broke into a staggering run. He had to get help, had to tell someone what had happened. Barely thinking, he pelted past the circus paybox and into the big top. "Murder!" he cried. "There's been a murder!" The clowns in the ring stopped tumbling and stared. The audience in their seats stopped cheering and stared. High above, Clarissa Everett stood on her tightrope and stared. Wild Boy stumbled forward, breathless with fear. Professor Woolstonstoft's blood dripped from his hands and stained the sawdust. He couldn't stop shaking. He tried to speak, but the words didn't come out properly. "There's a murder!" The tent dissolved into chaos. The scaffold shuddered and screams rang out as the audience fled their seats, terrified by this creature covered in blood. "It's a bear!" someone said. "It's rabid! It's a rabbit!" "No," Wild Boy said. "Listen to me!" Someone shoved him away, and he tripped and fell into the sawdust. "Everyone get back!" a voice roared. Mary Everett limped into the tent, one arm leaning on her crutch. In her other arm she held a shotgun, and it was aimed at Wild Boy. Wild Boy cowered, covering his head. "Don't shoot!" he yelled. "I ain't no animal." The ringmaster didn't shoot, but nor did she lower her gun. "It's no bear," she said. "It's a bloody freak." "Please," Wild Boy said. He was desperate to explain, but now another voice called from outside. "Out here! Someone's killed the professor! Look, this freak's got blood on him!" "No," Wild Boy said. "It wasn't me. Listen." Mary Everett squinted at Wild Boy and the crust of white makeup cracked across her face. "I can't hear," she said. "Come closer." "Please," Wild Boy said, scrambling forward. "I saw what happened." "That's close enough," the ringmaster said. Wild Boy knew that he'd been tricked and his heart broke. He tried to slide back, but he was too late. Mary Everett swung her shotgun and smashed him in the face. A blinding white light filled his eyes, and then everything turned red as blood trickled down his face. He saw blurry crimson visions of the circus crew crowding around him, of Clarissa watching from a high wire. of Mary Everett peeling one of his long hairs from the barrel of her gun. Through the haze of blood, the ringmaster's powdered face looked like a raging ball of flames. "Gather the boys," she said. "Tell them we caught the killer." And then everything went black. Remember, I want you to pick out all of the adjectives.